Hey guys, it's RT here, back with another Dead by Daylight video. Today I want to talk about this chapter that just released on the PTB today. Keep in mind that all the things I'm going to be talking about today are my first impressions, and my opinions are probably going to change. But yeah, my opinions, let's talk about that. Now the last two major updates for Dead by Daylight have been atrocious. Just poorly thought up and created updates. So this chapter needed to be good. From what I've seen so far, this chapter is yet another disappointment. Why, you may ask? Well, let's talk about that. First of all, this is the smallest chapter we have ever received content-wise, at least to my knowledge. Every chapter is usually released with one killer, one survivor, and either a new map or updated versions of the older maps. This chapter we did not get any sort of new map or any updated maps, just the killer, survivor, and some minor changes to Wraith and Blight. Speaking of the new killer, let's talk about him. First of all, he doesn't look like a killer. He literally looks like an NPC in the Walking Dead Saints and Sinners VR game. And just, his overall design looks very silly. But that's subjective, so I'm not going to talk about his design for long. His power works almost exactly like Huntress, except it's a bit more complex, which is a problem DBD has had for years now with releasing killers with rehashed powers from older killers, such as Huntress and Deathslinger, and Trapper and Hag. From my first impressions of playing the new killer, I should probably mention his name is the Trickster. He's a fairly weak killer. He's unable to reliably down survivors with his knives because the damage dealt with the knives slowly goes away after a while. He's basically only good on loops with short walls that he can shoot over. For example, if the Trickster is looping on a filler pallet with tall walls that he can't shoot over, there's literally nothing he can do. He has to slowly try to get close enough to the survivor at his 110% movement speed, and keep in mind he still has to get close enough to make up for the little wind-up he does when he pulls out a knife. Now by the time you've caught up to the survivor, you're either getting hit on the head by a pallet, or you manage to hit one or two knives, which damage goes away by the time you catch up to that survivor again. He also isn't that great at range because his knives are quite slow, and have small hitboxes unlike hatchets, and have recoil when rapidly firing, which is ideally what you want to do. So yeah, first impressions, a weak killer overall. Last thing I want to talk about are the perks. Now nothing much is usually expected from the new perks that come out in these chapters. They're usually just half-assedly put together, just so Behavior can say they made 6 new perks. You know, occasionally there's a decent perk that they make that people use sometimes, and every once in a while they release a meta perk, but most perks are pretty forgettable and you rarely see them in game. This time, at least from what I can tell, the perks might actually be worthwhile, but only on the killer side. None of the survivor perks will probably ever be used, with the exception of Hit and Run, I think it's called. But the killer's perks, on the other hand, have the potential to dramatically change the game, as in the whole game, and give an overall buff to killers. One of the killer perks blocks the exit gates for an extra 10 seconds per token, and you get tokens for each survivor that's hooked, which is basically going to happen every game. Another one of his perks applies the exposed status effect to any survivors in the killer's tear radius when they pick up a survivor. This perk by itself has the potential to cause so much pressure without the killer even needing to do anything. When a survivor gets hooked, usually the closest person to the hook goes for save, right? Well, not anymore, because that person's going to be exposed. Now the survivors that are furthest away and are probably on generators have to save, and they might not even know they need to save if they are playing with randoms. But yeah, overall, this has to be one of, if not the most disappointing chapter in the history of Dead by Daylight. If you enjoyed, please leave a like as it helps out the channel a ton, and subscribe to get notified when I upload my next video.